question answer if possible. I have to say it's a bit frustrating listening to the Minister and some of the other Fine Gael TDs because it's a combination of lip service to the idea of the importance of the arts, combined then with a certain supposed realism about what can be done in terms of funding. And really that's just the same approach that existed before the crisis, but repackaged for the crisis. Because it's precisely that lip service combined with a significant absence of support, with low levels of public support compared to the European average, for example, that has left the arts sector in the state that it's in, particularly vulnerable to this crisis. But now the government, in reality, appears to be doubling down on that. One very concrete question, it's been mentioned, but I'll leave time for the Minister to answer, is about the situation facing arts workers who have not only lost all of their income, in many cases have been left out of pocket because of investing in projects that then had to be cancelled, still renting out studios, other spaces, even though they're unable to use them. But some unable to access even the pandemic unemployment payment because of the precarious nature of their job. So do you support the demand of the Artists Blackout campaign to streamline access, to accept a letter of reference from any Irish cultural organisation, to mean that workers can actually access this, to make it accessible for those who work in the arts? And do you not also agree, and I get the impression that you don't from what you said earlier, that it must be continued at the level that it is, at the very least, until the ban on mass gatherings and events is lifted? And that afterwards we should not go back to the old inadequate payments. I mean, the Minister says, well, we can't have this inequity. Well, why are we levelling down? Why aren't we levelling up? And why aren't we reviewing all the payments? And as part of that, ensuring that arts workers going forward have stable income, a bottom floor of which is the basic minimum that the government has effectively accepted that people need to survive on now, which is the $350.
Yeah, I'll start with you first, and if I leave any answers out, you can remind me of them. But just in relation to the income supports in general, and you talk about that, I mean, just from a reality check perspective, I mentioned earlier on there's 1.1 million people in receipt of social welfare benefits in the country. That's €203 per week for 212,000 people. There are now 213,000 people at the end of April on the live register. The amount of people who are receiving the pandemic unemployment payment in Ireland at the moment is 589,000 at a cost of 206 million. So far we spent 908, the state has spent 908 million on that particular wage subsidy scheme. 53,600 employers have availed of it and 460,000 employees. And of the pandemic unemployment payment, 14,000 people from the arts sector have availed of that, according to the Department of Social Welfare. So art workers are getting the support that's required from the government. And after workers from the accommodation, the construction, administration and retail sectors, the arts has the highest share of people claiming the pandemic unemployment payment. And, you know, it's a higher level of support than in Northern Ireland, which is only 100 sterling. So we're significantly more than that. I mentioned earlier that, you know, this narrative saying that, you know, we're broadly in line with the European average. We are actually more than the UK and more than Germany. The UK is actually, it's money reallocated of National Lottery project grants. So that's from a development fund. So the reality is that most of the money was repurposed and already in the 2020 budget, whereas in Ireland 25 million of funding was made available in March to the Arts Council to assure funding would get to artists affected by COVID-19. So, I mean, that is significant. But, you know, as I mentioned earlier on, there's a huge deficit here. I can assure you, Deputy, I am and I have been. And, you know, I have actually, my department's vote has increased by 23% since 2017. I have significantly increased the funding to the arts since I took office 2.5 years ago. And if I had the opportunity to remain here, Ceann Comhairle, I will continue to do that, and I will fight really hard for this sector, because, you know, Deputy Boyd Barrett is right. The world wouldn't be a good place over the last number of weeks if we didn't have the music and the arts and everything else to sustain us. And if anything, that will give a loud signal to everybody. But I am pleased that they can at least avail of these supports that are there.